Hello everybody and welcome to WordCast number 60. I bumped the table right at the beginning because I'm a genius.
Yeah,
Just
you are.
now, that was great. But anyway, yeah, welcome to WordCast number 60. We're finally in the 6-0, so we're getting real close to the magic number. So this is pretty good. A lot of big news. Of course, we're going to be talking about Turing because, you know, that happened in the new RTX series, as well as some more news about AMD Threadripper 2, i9s, and some other random stuff, as well as we have an unboxing in here of a monitor that I refuse to say the model number of because it's 16 characters long. So instead I'm going to say the 38-inch, 3840 by 1600 75 hertz ultra-wide from Acer because that's quicker to say than their model number.
No, it's not.
I mean, it's pretty close, though.
No, it's not.
It's pretty close. It's easy to remember. That's for sure.
Meh.
So, yeah. I actually don't even, the model number. I should look up the model number.
No, you shouldn't.
Why?
Because
I'm going to look up the model number. It is the monitor, to tell you the truth, is the XR382CQK BMIJQPHUZX.
I think they could have gone longer.
I'm really getting annoyed with the, 10 characters or 12 characters that come after the actual model number, because they'll have, 4 monitors under that model number, and then they have the suffix, which is, it means, HDR, for example, whereas the other one that has another, 10, 12 characters isn't the HDR model.
Yeah.
So in this case, actually, they only have 2. They have 2
think
models.
they could just have HDR.
Yeah, but no, instead they add BMIJQPHUZX to the end of it. So anyway, yeah, we'll have an unboxing of that coming for you guys towards the end as well, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah,
But,
let's jump right into Turing, though. So the way that we're going to kind of structure this, so we'll go over the actual listed specs, and then I think a good way to go about it from there would be to talk about some of the things we've seen as far as benchmarks and gameplay, because there's some important things to note about the reliability of that right now, and then we can get into just our personal thoughts on everything. So yeah, let's talk specs.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
Let's get this out of the way so I don't have to list it for all of them. They all have USB-C virtual link for VR. There was some weird things listed with their website as far as the 2080, but that's essentially confirmed that every card will have virtual link.
Well, out of the 3 released, not necessarily the ones that are going to come later, I'm assuming, that are on the lower tiers.
All of the RTX line.
Yeah, all the RTX line has VR link for sure.
Yes.
And I would assume all the 20 series will, but, who knows? I mean, everything that's VR certified.
60 and above.
Yeah,
probably.
60 and above, maybe 50 Ti, since, last year the 60 was considered the VR capable, the minimum VR capable spec, so they might drop it one lower considering they're more powerful. We'll see.
But yeah, so other than that, so let's start with the cheapest one that you can't buy yet. The RTX 2070. This one, MSRP $499. The Founders Edition and most cards that at launch will be $599 plus. You have 2,304 CUDA cores with a base clock of 1410. The reference spec boost is 1620, whereas the Founders Edition is 1710. And this is something that we'll see consistent across the board for the RTX line, is that the Founders Edition's boost clock is exactly 90 megahertz above the reference spec base.
Yeah, so which I find that interesting. It's kind of weird. Some people, including myself, were speculating that there was maybe a chance that they were binning their chips, and that's why the Founders Edition clocks were higher, which would be kind of really scummy of NVIDIA if they were binning their chips for their cards.
Both be scummy and a terrible job at binning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it's only a 90 megahertz increase, so that might more so be for helping out the blower cards and other stuff like that. That'll be using the more reference spec. Now, I did want to go over just for fun information versus previous series on these. The 2070, like I said, has 2,304 CUDA cores, and that's on a 12 nanometer process instead of 14, but it's not really that much different in terms of the process. But we are looking at the old 1070 had 1920. But the 1070 Ti had 2432. So I would imagine in a non-ray tracing workload, which we'll get more on that later, I would imagine that this will perform pretty similar to a 1070 Ti, which when you consider the pricing is about right for the MSRP. Little expensive for the Founders Edition for that performance, but of course there's more that plays into it, and it does have the full 8 gigabytes, just like last year, but it's GDR6 this time.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, so this has the 8 gigabytes. Now the other thing is that, and this gets into the whole important aspect of the RTX line, this has the ability to do 6 gigaраys per second.
I hate that term. Even if it's an accurate term, I hate the term.
Of ray tracing rendering. So the big thing with this and why they are called RTX rather than GTX is that these are ray tracing cards. So essentially, for those that don't know what ray tracing is, it's essentially just a different lighting technique. You're better off looking it up than us trying to explain that here. But essentially...
The best way, I think, to explain it to people, the thing I've come across is, you know how animated movies look way better lighting-wise than games? That's because ray tracing. Yeah. And the goal is to implement that real-time in gaming. So hence RTX real-time ray tracing.
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to do because it literally requires processing lights bouncing everywhere. Gigarays is an accurate term. It's literally like a crap ton of rays being processed. And so it's very, very, very hard to process. So you're going to see things like, if you look at the marketing that NVIDIA puts out, like 6 times the performance, which is accurate in ray tracing, because other hardware can't do ray tracing for shit.
Not necessarily in gaming.
Yes.
And that's something that I think confused some people, is they thought NVIDIA, they threw out like 4 different performance numbers in terms of how many times faster it is, and those were for all different scenarios that were very specific.
NVIDIA pretty much only talked about ray tracing at this event.
Yeah, they didn't even talk about impressive 4K gaming performance or something, which, I don't know, I find personally kind of funny because NVIDIA seems to think the 1080 Ti was their 4K gaming push, but I feel like it wasn't enough.
It just depends on what you classify as 4K gaming, because for you it's like maxed out settings. For some people it's like high.
Yeah, right. And I get that, but I guess I just feel like it was still a little bit lacking even in the high settings in some areas, and I feel like maybe this time around we'll have a card that can properly do 4K minus the ray tracing portion.
So next up we have the RTX 2070. This one's 2080, sorry. This one starts at $699 MSRP with $799 for the Founders Edition. 2,944 CUDA cores with a 1515 base clock. The reference specs boost is 1710 with Founders Edition being 90 megahertz higher, so 1800. This also has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 with the same 448 gigabytes a second memory bandwidth. This processes 8 gigarays per second rather than the 6 from the 2070.
Up a little.
And then it also supports NVLink, which is the SLI replacement at a much higher bandwidth.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting is the NVLink, which is, like you said, SLI replacement, starts in the 80 instead of the 70 series this time around. Not necessarily surprising because, to be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen a 1070 build using SLI.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to buy a 1070 with the intention of SLI.
Yeah, the only reason is if you buy one and then decide, I ran into money later, but I don't want to buy a brand new card. I'd rather get the extra performance from adding a second card, which has been a common thing over a really long period of time. Is like it used to be the lower end cards, like even back in the 660 days and stuff, you could SLI those up to 4 of them, and that was great for the people that wanted to scale over time or ended up finding money but didn't want to shell out enough money, because a new card, if the optimization, assuming good optimization, a new card oftentimes would only give you 30% more performance versus the potentially 90% more.
Which is why it's so much better for long term, because eventually those cards drop in price as people are trying to get rid of them. So yes, you're buying them and you're not getting as much performance as an individual card can get. But if you're not paying as much, you might be getting similar performance per dollar.
Right, exactly. So. And I think it's okay, though, in my opinion, mostly to start this on the 2080 series, because that actually leads people to potentially have the intention of buying a card with plans to add one later, because you're already buying what is nearly the highest end you can get.
Yeah, and I think this helps with reducing some of the uninformed consumers buying crappy cards with the expectation of having multiple and thinking it'll work. And also help with sketchy third-party companies building computers and trying to push the lower-end multiple configuration stuff.
Which that was not cool, where they would upcharge to have multiple cards, and it's like for the same price you could get a single card. And especially for SI, system integrators, it's better for them to push single card configs anyway. They should be, even though they get lower profit. So that's why they'd oftentimes push multi-card, because multi-card does run into more issues, albeit I haven't ran into a lot myself, but you still have a higher chance of running into problems that a generic consumer wanting to play PC games that so happens to have 10K for a rig doesn't, we don't want them running into that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also just very misleading. You get a lot of people thinking, who don't understand how this stuff works, thinking that their performance will scale. So it's like, oh, I buy 2 graphics cards, I get twice the performance.
Right. It's
and
like it's never been that way. You get up to 95% only on a few games, and usually anywhere from about properly optimized games about another 60 to 80%, and then poorly optimized games 10 to 20%, and no optimization. Well, it used to be you could have a performance reduction, although now it's more common to just see the same performance of a single card. And that's something that can confuse a lot of gamers.
Also, there was no clarification on any of those sites that you don't get perfect scaling.
Right, exactly. The only thing you knew is if you watched reviews or something like that, or you knew prior. Now, NVLink looks really interesting. I hope that it does actually improve the performance overall of multi-card setups. So I guess multi-card setups aren't dead, which is awesome. We saw setups there that were being shown off that had 2 2080s in SLI with, I don't even know if they're going to still call it SLI or if they're going to call them NVLinked. I don't know, but point is they had an NVLink bridge on them.
There is no mention of SLI on the pages for the 20.
Yeah,
series,
yeah, and they never talked about it, but I would have liked to see a little bit more on what 2 cards could do together, but we'll just have to wait for benchmarks of that. Yeah. But I'm hoping NVLink allows the better bandwidth, allows better optimization on the developer end. My question is the better bandwidth mostly going to be to make sure the cards can communicate properly since they have so much bandwidth, or is this going to be a new form of multi-GPU where NVIDIA does more work? I would assume because it's NVLink they're going to do more work regardless, but I'm wondering if it's still going to be very similar in terms of scaling versus SLI, or if we're going to see more like GPU pool type stuff where more games work with it and stuff. I kind of doubt the latter there. It's probably going to be basically SLI. They just had to use this to make it have enough bandwidth since we have so much memory bandwidth with GDDR6.
Yeah.
But
and some of what we'll get into in a second is there's so much other stuff going on with these cards, we don't know what else they need. So let's get through the 2080 Ti, and then we can talk about the rest of it.
The monster of the pack here.
Yeah, so this one is essentially what it seems like NVIDIA is doing, which is really smart to do, but it's frustrating a lot of people because they don't really understand or think about this. The Ti seems to have taken the place of what previously would have been the Titan. Yeah. And then that way they can release a Titan later, probably, that will actually be the Titan of the pack.
Yeah. So that's what they released 2 Titans for Pascal, right? They released the original Titan, which had the same CUDA core count as the 1080 Ti when it came out. And then they released the Titan that was the full GP104, I believe, chip. It was the full-fledged one, right, that you had to pay a lot more for that performed better, so you could outperform the 1080 Ti. And so they're doing that kind of the same thing here, but this time they're not going to release 2 Titans, it looks like, which is nice because everybody got mad about that.
Yeah, they've done a lot. For the past few generations, essentially, it's been a really weird scenario where they release the main cards, like the 70 and 80, and then they release a Titan, and then they release the Ti that is better than the Titan.
Yeah, because oftentimes even so with Maxwell it wasn't better than the Titan.
It was on par.
But it was on par because the clock speeds were higher, even though the CUDA core count was lower. Which, by the way, in case you guys don't know, CUDA cores, it's just a floating point unit. Then there was also Pascal where they had more CUDA cores, but only later in the later Titan. The first Titan had the same amount as the 1080 Ti, so the 1080 Ti outperformed it because it had higher clock speeds. So
it stops this whole uncertainty. I think it makes a lot more sense to release the Titan later.
I think so too. Yeah. Or even if they release it at the same time, as long as the other stack is there, so that they're not releasing middle stack stuff, right?
Yeah. So what we have here, so the MSRP is $999. The Founders Edition is $11.99 on this one.
So I wanted to mention something regarding the price. I have not seen a pre-order for a single 2080 Ti below $1,150. Most were $1,200 or higher. So I do want to mention MSRP being $1,000. Of course,
people should. There's a lot of people really mad that there's no MSRP cards. There was no MSRP cards when the 10 series launched either.
Correct. Yes.
I feel like everyone is just so ready to bounce on NVIDIA that all the stuff that nobody complained about previous gen, they're complaining about now.
Yeah, because we have some more of that later for you guys. Yeah. But I just want to note for anybody that's buying it now, if you're wanting it now. You are paying what is likely going to be a
you
premium
shouldn't be
for
buying it now.
And you shouldn't be buying it now
we'll
regardless, even if you have unlimited money. We'll get into more later. But
so we have 4,352 CUDA cores at 1350 megahertz base clock. The reference spec boost is 1545 with the Founders Edition being 1635. This one has 11 gigabytes of GDDR6, so a total of 616 gigabytes of memory bandwidth.
So that is a beast in terms of the memory configuration. So that way you can turn on hardware acceleration in Firefox and eat up all your VRAM.
Yeah. So it also supports NVLink, and then this one has 10 gig arrays, which is impressive because that's on par with some of the much, much more expensive Quadro stuff.
Yes, indeed. Of course, the Quadros still have more going for them. But,
but it just... The fact that the ray tracing specific aspect is on par, which something we should explain as far as how the ray tracing works is interesting because ray tracing has been done in Pascal and Volta before, but it sucked. I mean, when you're talking
like real time wise, it's important to note that this is all about real time, doing it while you're playing a game. Not like ray tracing in terms of processing that for rendering and stuff it
was still just slow as shit.
Right.
But what's really interesting, so some of you may have seen the Unreal Engine Star Wars real-time ray tracing demo. That was done on a $50,000 machine, and the 2080 Ti can do that same thing faster. That is how much of a difference dedicated ray tracing hardware can make.
Yeah, which is mostly related to the tensor cores.
Yes.
But
there's RT cores and tensor cores. It's all built. We're not going to explain all that because we don't have time, and if you want to watch it, there's better resources than trying to explain it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, right, indeed. Yeah, but they have tensor cores on these, which is interesting.
Yes,
that
which
is
we did not
to
expect. For those that don't know, tensor cores are for processing of like machine learning and AI.
Yeah, they're a very let's not get into it.
Yeah. If you know what ASICs are for mining, it's like a dedicated card for that. It's kind of like that for AI.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, essentially what we have here is just a full stack of cards that is very different.
A half stack of cards, but that depends on...
The important stack.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Right. We'll see how the rest of the series performs, right? Because we don't even know... I mean, maybe we are going to get an RTX 2060. Right,
yeah.
Like we don't know.
But... I mean, NVIDIA liked to make the joke that all the rumors we saw weren't true, but they all were true.
Yeah, I wanted to note the best part about that is when I was watching a live blog about this, and when I read that happened, was like, oh, none of the rumors you read are true. I'm like, WCCF Tech article posted less than 24 hours ago, and I looked back and I was like, okay, actually every single thing matched.
So normally they don't rehearse their events. They even made a joke about that at their SIGGRAPH event, at how this was done in real time. They rehearsed this event, which means they scripted it, probably before all the new rumors came out.
Yeah, that's
so
likely,
when they scripted it, the rumors were false.
Yeah, but then when they actually talked about it, all of a sudden it was like rumors from like a week ago were exact, because when he first said that, I was like, is he serious? Because I'm gonna be real excited if that's the case, or real disappointed, one or the other, right? And then I was like, nope, that's exactly what we expected it to be, to the clock speed. But whatever.
So this whole lineup is going to be very interesting though, because when it comes to actual performance, it's really hard to judge right now because for one, there's no actual good setup planned benchmarks. There's only what people saw, what people are estimating for frame rates based on what they saw in person.
Well, there was the Tomb Raider demo did have a frame rate counter.
Yeah, but I'm talking
the Battlefield
for most things. Battlefield did not. The non ray traced enabled games, I believe,
those didn't have any frame rate counters. Yeah, exactly.
So essentially what we have is Tomb Raider and Battlefield were both running at 1080p below 60 FPS with ray tracing enabled.
Yes.
But ray tracing is not ready for prime time in those games.
Yeah, there's no driver optimization.
Yeah.
There's no, even if there was drivers custom from NVIDIA to help, there's still not proper driver optimization. Yeah. None of the AI stuff, which we'll get to, plays into it yet. And also, the developers are not tuning for that very specifically yet. These are still really early games.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're not in engines that are ready for ray tracing yet. So Unreal Engine has their support pretty much ready and good to go, it seems like. But Tomb Raider, its own engine. Battlefield is in Frostbite, which is pretty much made by DICE, and they're still working on that. The developers of Tomb Raider said that the performance that is being shown is supposed to be nothing like what you will actually get.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising, because if you guys have owned early access games, you may have had early access games that ran horribly, and then the few developers that actually finished their games got that performance up to be amazing. There's a lot, like, developers don't do optimization until the last step.
Yeah, because you're building the game first. Yeah. Like, why all the optimization stuff is going to have to come later in most instances, because that's lower on the priority list anyway, and that can be done after the fact, and you don't want to try and optimize and then make drastic changes to the textures or some other aspect of the game or some new figure in an area, and then all of a sudden go, okay, everything's broken now. You want to do that when everything's already ready to go. So it makes sense that we're not going to see great ray tracing performance. That being said, this was 1080p, and in some instances we were seeing like 40 FPS wise.
Yeah.
And I did want to note that, say we take 40 FPS, just even though it's probably a little lower than the average actually was.
Yeah.
Even if we, let's say, all right, we double that, we're at 80, but it's still 1080p. We triple that or quadruple that. Let's say they managed to quadruple that, right? So then we're looking at 160 frames per second. At 1080p, when you scale up to 4K, that might be close to 60 or a little bit above 60, which is good. That's the minimum mark you want to hit. Yeah. But that's still, of course, lower. Like, I'm more interested myself, even though the ray tracing stuff's incredible, and this is a great introduction to ray tracing hardware and ray tracing games. Of course, it's going to take the industry years and years to adapt, and I really wish that NVIDIA had talked more about the performance level without ray tracing, because considering the CUDA core count and the clock speeds, I think it's somewhat likely we see really good performance with ray tracing off.
Yeah.
We'll see, of course, there's a lot that plays into that.
And I wouldn't be surprised if closer to NDAs being lifted and everything that we actually get performance from them. I think they just wanted to get everyone talking about ray tracing right now.
Because that's their big push, and they want to push the industry in that direction, even if these cards aren't that great at it. Yeah. Even if the 2080 Ti is... Say for ray tracing, it's really only a 1440p card, and the 2070 is like a 1080p-ish card with ray tracing on. Even if that's the case, pushing the industry as hard as we can in that direction so that we get the holy grail, for now at least, of lighting real time being a big thing, let's say 4 years from now, right? Just like 4K, where we had the 980 Ti, NVIDIA called a 4K card, which was by no means really was. But they call it a 4K card. They pushed 4K, and 4K and high resolution stuff, especially like ultra wides and stuff, is more on that later, guys. Is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and you have to push the industry in that direction in order for... We said this in the last WordCast as well, talking about Threadripper 2, but it's like the hardware companies, they push the industry forward in terms of what's optimized for. Oh, yeah. So, we were getting at, hardware... Yeah, so the hardware industry pushes things... Sorry, we had a break there, guys, but the hardware industry pushes things forward, and then the developers optimize for it. And so, like we were talking about with the 32-core 2990WX last week, is that chip likely isn't going to be properly optimized by the Windows scheduler and stuff until well later in the future when they have more time to work with it. Yes. And I think the same thing will happen here regarding ray tracing. And so if we want ray tracing to be popular in AAA and even indie games, we've got to start it at some point. And NVIDIA's making that push.
Yes. And this is something very important to note. Both you shouldn't pre-order yet because we have to wait for benchmarks. But also, no matter what the benchmark come out as, if whatever the non-ray tracing benchmarks aren't alone good enough for you to buy it, do not buy these cards.
Yeah.
You should not buy hardware with the promise of software to come.
Yeah, exactly. And so don't be trying to upgrade from like a 1080 Ti to a 2080 or a 2070. Maybe if the 2080 Ti is fast enough, but the 1080 Ti is still going to beat the 2070 and the 2080 most likely in non-ray tracing workloads.
Yeah.
And so don't be that person, make sure that it's a significant upgrade, not with ray tracing. So we're not saying these cards suck or don't buy them, but more so don't upgrade for ray tracing, upgrade for the performance, and enjoy the ray tracing if it becomes a big thing like we hope and assume it probably will.
Yeah.
So, and I actually wanted to touch a little bit more on the pricing of these, although do we want to go over the AI first? So to talk about the AI portion of stuff here, so there's a lot of things regarding AI. Some of it might be exaggerated marketing BS. Some of it might be really interesting. We'll have to see where it goes. But regardless, it's interesting talk.
Yeah, so essentially what's happening here is that, and if you saw any of the SIGGRAPH stuff, NVIDIA kind of talked about it then too.
Yeah.
They are trying to use AI to essentially help get things a little bit further, make up for visuals so that you can do more complicated rendering and still hit the same time to render. So in this case, one of the big examples they used was with anti-aliasing. So essentially you would have the game process the anti-aliasing already, the normal anti-aliasing, and then you would have AI do additional anti-aliasing to smooth things out. Meaning that, for one, yes, you can get better overall visual quality if you have the power to max out AA, but also you can run a lower AA and then get a bit higher quality out of that AI.
Yeah.
Now, the way that this would work, because obviously every game is different, there's a lot of complex things, is that NVIDIA would do the training. They haven't specifically confirmed, but everything indicates that they'll pass the data along from the training via the driver optimizations that they already do on a game-by-game basis. And then from there, the AI would just know what to do for that game. We don't know exactly how this will be enabled, but probably through GeForce Experience. There's just a lot of unknowns. But essentially what NVIDIA is claiming is that they can get a decent amount of extra performance in the best of case scenarios, not in every case.
Yeah.
Because some games will be easier to do than others. Some games will give a lot more performance than others. For example, we discussed this earlier, racing games are going to be a lot easier to predict and therefore a lot easier to have AI enhance than something like an open world...
Dehance?
No. Open world, like, chaotic game, like, like a Grand Theft Auto, or even more than that, like a Borderlands or a Rage 2. Those are going to be games that are going to be much more complicated to do AI processing on because there's so much different things going on. Whereas a racing game, it's like you run each car through each track and you're pretty much good.
Yeah. And so it wouldn't surprise me if we see it primarily on things like racing and other types of games like that. It's an interesting thought, but I think that's one of the lowest things you should take from the conference is don't expect the AI to be that big of a deal. The big deals here are potentially raw performance, and definitely, even if the performance isn't good, ray tracing is a big deal in terms of the technology behind it.
When it comes to the AI, it's another thing where it'll probably not be great at launch and then eventually get better. So do not buy hardware with the promise of software to come.
Yeah. Again, we can't emphasize that enough. The hardware has to exist, but like I want a 2990WX at some point, but it doesn't make sense for me to purchase one until Windows gets the kinks worked out because right now it's not that great for gaming unless maybe specific scenarios, and I game about 50% of the time on my machine. So I actually wanted to go over here too. I think they have the TDPs listed on their site. Let's see here.
Yeah, they do. If I remember correctly, the 2080 Ti is 250.
260. Or wait, no. Sorry, the Founders Edition is 260 watts. The standard reference spec is 250, so don't be surprised if you see closer to like 280 and stuff like that from some of the AIBs with the really beefy coolers. The maximum GPU temperature is 89 degrees Celsius, just like Pascal, so this is in a lot of ways a Pascal architecture, right, in terms of the CUDA cores and stuff. And another thing I think was important to note is the GTX 1080 Ti has 3,584 CUDA cores. This has 4,352. And higher clock speeds in terms of boost. The base clock's a little bit lower, but the base clock, generally isn't used even on like blower cards. Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if this does hit, some pretty impressive performance numbers aside from ray tracing.
Yeah, and that's another thing is so TechRadar put out an article. Essentially, they were doing as much of a review as they could without breaking their NDA. So they couldn't talk specifics of games that they were shown. They couldn't talk, exact frame rates of certain aspects of things. But what they were saying is that in a lot of the games that they were shown, outside of ray tracing, they were seeing above or 4K at at 100 plus FPS in some games on ultra. So it very much depends on what games we have there. But if we're talking, relatively difficult, relatively good-looking games, then that's really impressive.
Yes.
Then that's where we get into, especially under his definition of 4K card.
Yes, which is like very
card.
close to max settings, if not max settings, in games like Witcher and stuff, right? Really intensive ones. And I wanted to note the CUDA core count, even not taking clock speed into account here, we're looking at about 18% more CUDA cores, which is a pretty solid amount. So doesn't necessarily mean 18% more performance, but let's say 15% or something like that is probably a good estimate. Although factoring in clock speed and overclocking, if it's good, let's say we get really lucky, I'm looking at 25%. There are some people I've talked to that thought maybe we get upwards of 40 to 50%, and I'm like, that's not how the math works. That's not.
Turing would have to be a very impressive architecture.
It would, indeed. It'd have to be like, there'd have to be special stuff about it, and so it's just, I thought that was kind of interesting, but
what I want people to start, and I mean I feel like in order to get proper reviews, which I have a feeling that initially a lot of the reviews we get for this are not going to be proper because this is a much, much more complicated card to review. Because, well, yes, you can just review raw performance to raw performance, no special techniques or anything. Ultimately, those special techniques do matter.
Yeah.
If they work, then that's important, and that extra performance really does matter. And if they don't work, and then we are relying on raw performance, then that information matters.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to see, how are we going to be able to compare with all the extra things like the AI processing on a per game basis, how much that works is going to be different. So we're going to have to see how reviewers go about handling that and how they decide to try and do similar visuals, or do they just go for similar specs and see how much better the AI does? Because I think that both matter. If you can go for, both 2 games on Ultra at 4K and just see what the AI does to FPS, probably not going to be all that significant.
Yeah.
But if you can lower the settings and get as close to 4K as possible,
then that's a big deal there.
Yes.
And so if they've achieved that alongside the ray tracing could also be a big deal, is if we got like a 1440p ray tracing card that can in some ways almost like upscale to 4K.
Yeah. Because we've seen just with, on the like PlayStation 4, for example, in some games, the checkerboard upscaling
can work really good.
Yeah, it can be 90, I mean, even it was, I'm blanking
Digital
on...
Foundry?
Digital Foundry.
Yeah.
We're saying that in some games it was like 95% the quality. So if we can if we can do like a really good upscaling technique, 95% the quality in optimal games, and then AI makes up only that other 5%. That's not unrealistic for AI to be a 5% visual bump.
No, not at all. No, I mean, but again, I want all the AI stuff to be taken with a grain of salt. I think,
and that's why I want. Testing is going to be very complicated, and that's why
just like it has been with Threadripper 2. Testing for reviewers that actually get this hardware for like free and get to review it, testing of newer products is becoming really complicated. So,
but that's my concern is I there's been a lot of talk of these cards and a lot of like, I want benchmarks, I want to do my testing. I feel like people need to start talking about how this is going to happen, and maybe some I'm sure some of them are talking with NVIDIA about how some of this stuff is going to work. Because, if it's enabled via GeForce Experience, then maybe there'll be like-for-like settings. That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's going to be very interesting and very complicated.
Big news, though, is weight. We can't emphasize that enough, guys, is with the 10 series cards, because of the way NVIDIA pushed them and stuff, we'd still say wait, but we wouldn't say you really, 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 really should wait. We'd be like, it's not the end of the world, and you would have been happy with the 10 series cards. But so much has changed in terms of GPUs, and we have this trust that NVIDIA is going to do a good job. They pretty much always have done a good job. There were times where AMD was doing better than them, but they never really flopped too much. But we still got to be careful because it can still happen.
Yeah.
And that's something that's important to keep in mind here. And I don't think anybody should be pre-ordering these. Just like I was kind of mad, or I was fairly mad at AMD for releasing the unboxing embargo for the 2990 WX and then releasing the pre-order at the same time. But the reviews were a week after that. They wanted everybody to pre-order them ahead of time. Yeah. And that is something like pre-ordering with games, with stuff like this, it's generally not a good idea. You don't pre-order unless you have some way of knowing, if you're pre-ordering because they're still manufacturing them, but reviews are out or something like that, right?
Yeah. And this is one of those things where, and I know we had talked about this earlier as well, where it's like, it's a complicated situation with their NDA because, while yes, we obviously want as much numbers as we can now, those numbers are realistically just not accurate now. And so in this case, the NDA, obviously, yes, it's mostly to help NVIDIA, but it's also just helping consumers make a more accurate purchase because they just shouldn't have opened pre-orders now. Rather than opening the NDA up now and giving people inaccurate numbers, they should have just
hold it all off. Yeah.
Until like a week before the NDA should have dropped and the pre-order should have gone live.
Agreed.
That would have been my optimal
The pricing
situation.
And all that should have been announced, but I agree. They should have waited in terms of the NDA. I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about pricing because people are freaking out. And people are like, these are too expensive. There's no way I'm paying that much for a card. $1,200
specifically, they're saying that these cards are overpriced.
Yes, and people are saying overpriced. And we wanted to brush over that for you guys and say that there is a very specific distinction between expensive and overpriced. And something that people that don't understand manufacturing of silicon may not realize is these are expensive chips to produce regardless of how they perform.
They are very big.
They're very big. So, really, really quick brush over of silicon being made. You have a silicon wafer. Let's say yay big, just as an example. You have dies on that wafer. You make a whole bunch on one wafer at a time, and you cut them out. Okay? Let's say you punch them out as an example, right? So, what happens is, first off, it's a circle. So, the edges around it, those aren't full dies. Those are gone. So, whatever dies hang off the edge are done. The dies on the outer edges, though, don't perform as well and sometimes have more errors, such as cores, or in this case, floating point units, CUDA cores being disabled. And then the center are the really, really good ones. But as you can imagine, the bigger the die you make, the less you get per wafer, which are very expensive, and the more expensive that it is if you have a bad one. If you have one that dies that's not a good chip, that's a bigger portion of that silicon wafer being thrown out. And same with the outer edge, is as you go bigger, the ones on the outer edge, you have larger amounts of die being lost in that sense, and larger amounts of the silicon wafer itself being lost. And so the bigger the die, the more expensive they are to physically produce regardless of architecture. And these are, I believe, 752 millimeters squared for the 2080 Ti, which is like the second biggest die on the planet. There's also the Volta for the Titan V Volta. That was like 850 millimeters squared, and that's like approaching pretty much the limit of what we can do in terms of physical die size.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think was really important to note to people, was that these are expensive to produce, and that's part of why the prices are so high. It's not necessarily that they're overpriced. And they might be worse, like, say, not accounting for ray tracing. They might be worse than Pascal in terms of performance per dollar.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that NVIDIA is making as much profit. They might even be making less profit. I'm not sure. We don't know the profit margins, and they're practically a monopoly in the industry. So they might be making more profit off these. I'm sure it's a healthy margin. But people need to, I think, understand that the 2080 Ti is expensive because it's a huge die. And regardless of CUDA core count, that doesn't necessarily determine die size. So keep that in mind too, is there's tensor cores and other stuff added into these. So even though the 2080 is 2944 CUDA cores, which you would think, okay, well that might be a smaller die because there's less cores than the 1080 Ti, and it's the same price for the founder, or for the MSRP, and a little more for the founders. But you have to factor in the other things like the tensor cores that are added onto that are going to make a difference in terms of die size. And so they're expensive to produce.
Yeah.
So stop saying they're overpriced, guys. Say it's too expensive, I won't buy one. Sure.
Yeah.
But don't say NVIDIA's screwing us over and overpricing things, because I really don't think that's the case here.
Yeah.
I have no problem seeing an 18% increase in CUDA cores along with more with tensor cores being added in. I have no problem seeing a much bigger die versus the 1080 Ti being nearly twice as expensive.
Yeah.
And it scales too.
Yeah.
That's one last thing to be
whether
really,
you think the trade-off in what they added was worth it or not is completely different than NVIDIA just like doubling their profit.
Yeah, that's completely like, regardless of performance, this is an expensive chip to produce, and that scales as you get bigger.
Yeah.
So, or exponential, right? And so as you get larger in terms of the die size, the worse it gets. So even if this is only, let's say, a 10% increase as a random example in die size versus a $500 card, and these are $1,000, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it was only supposed to be a $550 card and they're just getting a bunch of extra money from it. There's diminishing return there. So.
Yeah. And that plays into something that we kind of wanted to touch, or I especially wanted to touch on when it came to this whole thing of people are getting mad at NVIDIA for a lot of stuff now that they didn't used to. It seems like everyone's just like ready to jump on the trigger, at least on like online communities like Reddit and certain like other places.
You know, I think a lot of that too comes from the GPP that everybody thought was a huge deal. Is everybody's now angry at NVIDIA persistently from that.
Every little thing, even if it was something that they just thought was fine or didn't care about before, is a big deal now.
Yeah, people are
something that we had been discussing back and forth was how the changes in the reference cooler design
which we should go over.
May or may not be screwing over add-in board partners, and I was just like, okay, but wasn't the whole Founders Edition program in the first place more of a screwing over of add-in board partners? Because for those that don't know, NVIDIA used to sell graphics cards like made by them, but it was a Best Buy exclusive. It was like a limited edition thing. I have a 970 that was...
I had a 970 from Best Buy too, and I went there to pick it up.
970 built by NVIDIA. It used to be that if you bought reference coolers, it was still an add-in board card.
Yeah.
It used to be like you'd buy an Asus or an MSI reference cooler card, and so the expansion into the Founders Edition completely screwed over add-in board partners because they didn't...
and retailers.
They didn't sell the reference cards.
Yeah,
you
could buy them
cared.
direct from
like,
NVIDIA.
Some people did, but it wasn't a big deal.
But a lot of people didn't complain. And I think my stance at this point now is I do think what they did with the cooler is screwing over add-in board partners, but nowhere near as much as just the straight going to the Founders Edition thing, period.
Yeah.
It's just the new cooler, which I guess we can go over, is... So for the longest time, guys, NVIDIA has done blower cards for their coolers. They've done reference blower cards. They changed it a little bit for the 10 series, making it more angular and stuff. I think it looks good. And they had that as a blower card as well. And blower cards have their advantages in certain situations in terms of like ITX builds along with other small form factor like multi-GPU builds, or maybe you have a bunch of different cards compact in the PCIe slots, so you need the blower cards because they can suck in air from the rear, not just the bottom, so they can cool themselves off that way. And so NVIDIA has been doing that for a long time, and there's been like a lot of builds actually go to NVIDIA for the blower card cooler. Now NVIDIA is using a 2-fan card, and it is not a blower card. So people were speculating at first because the first images of it looked like it was fully enclosed, and so maybe those fans are pushing air down and out the back.
Yeah.
No, it's open air. It's just like you would see from EVGA or Asus or whatever, a 2-slot 2-fan. Now it's a true 2-slot, which is nice. It's not a 2.5. But so they've done that. And what frustrated me about that, you know, I mean, like we said, the Founders Edition switch in the first place was really kind of screwing over add-in board partners pretty big time, bigger than this. But my slight concern here is add-in board partners almost don't have any reason now to produce a 2-slot 2-fan card. Now, a 2-slot 3-fan or a 2.5-slot 2 or 3 fan, or even a 3-slot 2 or 3 fan, which we're even seeing EVGA, who's never done this, doing a 3-slot 2-fan card. They can all still do that, of course, but just the 2-slot 2-fan market is kind of potentially grabbed by NVIDIA at this point, unless you can get the other cards for cheaper, because you're ordering directly from NVIDIA, and a lot of people like to do that. There's something that feels weirdly special about ordering directly from the manufacturer, and so I think it kind of takes a lot of the heat away, or not a lot of it takes a lot of the reward away from the add-in board partners for that particular design, which is a very, very common one, and I personally don't like it.
I don't really have as much of a problem with that. Now, I will have a big problem with it if we find out that NVIDIA is specifically binning their cards and giving themselves the better ones.
Yes. Because that's something you should have to pay a premium for. And the thing is, NVIDIA could do that and charge the same as everybody else because they don't have a middleman or two middlemen because you have retailers too.
They could be cutting themselves the same profit percentage as another company that would have to charge another $1,500.
Yeah. So let's say $1,200 for the 2080 Ti. Say it is binned just as good as the EVGA Kingpin card. Bet you the Kingpin's going to be $1,500 for the 2080 Ti. Yeah. So it's like maybe a little better cooling, but...
Yeah. Now, personally, I would find it hard to believe that they are doing any significant binning and only shipping the cards at a 90 megahertz boost unless that's to specifically appease add-in board partners.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is that, like, add-in board partners can up the clock to whatever they can get, pretty much, for the card. And that's where I think that for the 2-slot, 2-fan cards, assuming that they aren't doing any kind of special binning, that's fine. Add-in board partners can release 2-slot, 2-fan cards that are clocked higher.
They could, yeah, that's possible, you know, or the other thing is the one thing that I wanted to say that kind of counteracts NVIDIA potentially taking over what is, I would say, you know, I don't have data for this, but would be the most popular segment of graphics cards is a 2-slot, 2-fan. Probably, maybe not.
I almost don't think so.
I feel like maybe it's 2.5 slot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that unless you're doing a bunch of PCI cards...
or multi-GPUs.
Which I don't think most people do.
Yeah.
Most people don't. It realistically, with the exception of, like, small form factor and stuff, doesn't matter. I mean, if you have a 2 or a 3-slot card and you're not going to use that slot below it, who cares?
Yeah, right. So that's true. But I guess to counteract some of that, though, is now we could potentially see competition amongst add-in board partners for blower cards.
Yes.
So we might finally see some really good, potentially very quiet, very good performing blower cards, which is something that I would actually like to see. And I've already seen so far Asus has a blower card, completely black shroud with a little bit of white accenting. Looks sweet. I hope it's not annoyingly loud.
Which we never usually see. Competitors have blow-in or add-in board partners have blow-in cards at launch.
Yeah. A lot of them that don't have blow-in. A lot of them don't have blower cards, or they do, but they're just literally a rebrand of NVIDIA's, right?
Yeah.
And so now we might see potential competition moved up in that area because blower cards have a very good scenario, a very good area to be used in. They're great for things that are close together, like we said, but also a really big growing market is SFF builds, right? Small form factor, ITX and stuff. A lot of them don't have the airflow to remove the hot air that the GPU is introducing to the system because regular fan GPUs, all that hot air goes through the heatsink, heats up, and goes into the case. And if you don't have a case that has good airflow, you can't remove that. Blower cards, they are their own self-contained unit, just like a power supply. Their temperatures don't change. Depending on, they do, depending on case airflow, unless they're, like, right up to the side, like a lot of ITX builds, where they're sucking in fresh cold air. Yeah. Then their temperatures are their temperatures.
Yeah.
And, so they have ups and downs, of course, and I don't know, I hope we see some really, really, really nice designs for blower cards, because NVIDIA always nailed that, right? And the second thing is, the Asus one was pretty nice, but unless we see some really, really good ones, it's like that market's kind of dead. Then people that want good-looking blower cards, it's like, it sucks for you. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, to sum up every aspect of the RTX launch, from the details we saw to the actual potential performance to situations pertaining around NVIDIA's practices, everything is just, it's complicated and we need to find out more.
Yeah. That's a very good summation.
That is Turing, that is RTX.
Yes.
It's complicated.
Yes.
Wait. Okay, so the next topic today is the Logitech G Pro wireless mouse. It's really the only other product announcement that we have for this week.
Yeah, but it's more exciting than it seems initially, because initially it looks like, another FPS mouse.
Yeah, I sent him the teaser for it, and he was just like, seriously, another mouse?
Yeah, I was getting I was like, come on, like, can't we have some innovational in terms of buttons, which I still want, like, some more innovational ergonomic mice, but this is not what meets the eye initially,
So essentially what we have here is, I mean, it looks very much like the G403. It looks just like a first-person shooter mouse. That's it. It's just basic couple buttons.
Yep.
However, a few interesting things about this. So it's an ambidextrous mouse, but the buttons on the left or the right can be taken off, and you can put a cover on there so that it does not have those buttons to accidentally press, meaning that you can kind of shift it between left or right.
Yeah, and that's nice instead of just ambidextrous.
It means that they can just ship out one mouse. They don't have to ship a left and a right.
Yeah, and just have the covers.
You just buy the mouse and throw on whatever you want. If you want to try the other hand, maybe try and get used to that.
Yeah.
You can do that too. But ultimately, that's not really the important thing here.
I'm going to go left-handed now.
Yeah, okay. Do it.
Not going to do it. I
Okay.
can't.
This is the first 80-gram wireless mouse.
80 grams.
Yeah, that's...
Very lightweight.
Yeah, that's actually really crazy. So the way that they did this was they pretty much just got rid of most of the battery. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, we want good battery life.
Yeah, you're
comparing
right.
it to something like the G403, the battery life was, with RGB on, like a couple days at most of use.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wouldn't always be in use. This gets like double the battery life despite the much smaller battery. How'd they do that? The sensor. That is the magic behind this. That is pretty much why you buy this. This is a FPS mouse. That's it.
Yeah. CS:GO, maybe Overwatch.
Yeah. Quake, stuff like that.
Quake, yes,
it's
definitely
like fast-paced mice or fast-paced first-person shooters are where this mouse excels. It's where this mouse is designed for.
You should do it for competitive Call of Duty.
Yeah. Which, to mention for competitive games and Overwatch, London Spitfire used this throughout most of Overwatch League. This has actually been worked on for months. There's a reviewer. Let me find his name really quick.
Reddit?
Huh?
Reddit.com?
Yes. There's a mouse reviewer who's actually been using this mouse for months, and he has a review of this. So if you want to watch that review, if you want to see something more on it, his name is...
We'll link it in the description for you guys.
His name is RJN. He does a lot of mouse reviews. He's actually given feedback on this to Logitech as it went on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, his findings were that the only reason that he is not using this as his primary mouse is that it's a little too wide for his hand.
So it's a little bit of a wide. It's a pretty wide mouse, and I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I prefer ergonomic and not so wide, but also I'm kind of weird when it comes to mice. I like heavy mice.
Yeah.
I had a really, really, really light mouse. I had the.
It does
Mad
come
Catz
with weights,
Rip.
but you shouldn't buy this unless you want a light mouse because it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's $150.
Yeah, it's expensive. There's a lot of R&D that went into it to make it lighter and stuff. And, I had a light mouse. I had, a magnesium carbon fiber ceramic mouse from Mad Catz, RIP, that was like $250. I ended up selling it and going back to a heavy mouse from Logitech because it was too lightweight for me. So it depends on your use case and what you want. So you said, if you like heavier or middle weight mice, this isn't for you. But
also,
the technology
if you want
is amazing.
it to be even lighter, you can take off the bottom cover for the weight or for the... what's their wireless charging tech called?
Not dark field. Power play?
Yes.
Power play.
You can take off the cover for the weight or power play adapter, and it actually shaves off even a few grams, so it's actually a sub 80-gram mouse if you do that.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. With power play's adapter enabled, which does have some extra weight, it's still only 88 grams.
Which is impressive. That's really impressive.
So you have a wireless charging mouse which also I feel like they should just make a lighter mouse with no battery that's designed for power play or minimal battery.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what Razer's done, right? Is they have the it basically has capacitors in it. The mouse only works for about 3 seconds off the pad, right? Just enough that if you are doing a lift up, right, that you can still play.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe an option, although I still like the idea of having some battery because it would suck to run into...
I'm not saying get rid of it completely, but they could shrink it down to what the existing G403 was. Yeah. Cut the battery in half again.
Yeah.
And still give you 2 days of game time. But then also, if you want wireless, it's still sub 80 grams.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy about this whole mouse. This sensor is actually really insane. It's something that the mouse reviews subreddit has been really hyped about this mouse for a while, and I didn't really understand why until I saw the reviews talking about the actual sensor, because I didn't see that news. I didn't really follow that subreddit before.
Yeah.
But this mouse is wicked, and I can't wait to see this sensor in other mice, even though it's not going to be as important because the weight doesn't matter so much in most other mice.
Right. Yeah, but
it's like Twitch FPS games are, I think, where it probably matters the most.
I think so. Yeah, that's where it's the biggest of deals. So you're gonna buy 3 of them, one for you, one for me, one for Mirko, right? The whole team. Oh,
no.
Okay.
However, I would like that sensor in the MX Master.
Because the battery life.
Yes, if I could have an MX Master with like 2 years of battery. If I could, in fact, give me screw this micro USB stuff. Just give me a non-rechargeable MX Master that lasts 5 years.
You know what you could do is and nobody complain because the battery life's so good. Put the charging port on the bottom.
Apple. I was actually just thinking that.
Yeah.
Apple needs this sensor just so that they can.
They can justify that?
No, there's no justification.
There's no justification. I'm sorry.
Having to not be able to use your mouse.
That's like you have to fill the gas on your car by going under the car and plugging in. Like, how's that? That's not how you do things.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's like putting the charger for your laptop.
How many people approved that? Like, yeah, you put the charger for your laptop like where the logo is.
No, you put it on the screen.
Yeah. Click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not just how many people approved that. After they approved it, after it shipped, after the feedback, they still haven't changed it. It's been years.
Yeah, and they're just like, meh, everybody hates it, but they're still buying it.
Yeah.
So.
Also, in less important mouse news from Logitech, they announced a new MX mouse. It's an MX vertical for people that are really concerned about ergonomics.
Yeah.
Thank fucking God, it finally has a USB-C charger.
Yeah, and it looks good and quirky, and if you're into that thing, go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about the USB-C charger because there's no reason this didn't have it.
Yeah, they all should have it realistically. Yeah. And now you have 2 high-end mice in the 2S series from them. Mm-hmm. One has micro and one has...
No, they have 3 mice.
Oh, they have 3, but still.
The MX Anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good point. But then, so the MX Anywhere is also micro, though, right?
Trackball one.
So we have one that's C, and then...
Yeah, the newest one is C, all the rest are...
Okay. So we've got a little section here called Super Swift Shooters. I came up with a really dumb name. It's like middle ground rapid fire for you guys. Yeah. So this is basically going to be stuff that we want to cover in a little more detail, but don't want to spend a ton of time on. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to start with is the 2990WX got some liquid nitrogen treatment and overclocking regarding that. No, so it got the LN2 treatment, which was pretty interesting by Ivan Kupa. I don't know. I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. But he managed to push the 2990WX to 6 gigahertz on all cores using LN2.
Yeah.
All of them.
A little bit.
All of them. So that's kind of insane right there. And by kind of, I mean seriously insane.
Now, can you play games on it yet?
I know, right? Yeah. So this was using the MSI MEG or MEG, however you want to say it, X399 Creation motherboard MSI. Please fix your name.
MEG like the Megalodon, the shark, the movie with Rainn Wilson from The Office.
It's almost as bad as Acer's model numbers. Stop it, MSI. Why do companies that just want to they're like, how much of a sentence can we make this model number?
Isn't X399 Creation good enough?
Yeah, I don't get why they're like, oh, it has to be the MSI MEG.
Unless MEG is some new sub-brand?
I don't think it is. I don't know. It's really weird. But, yeah, so the name's horrible. But anyway, this is using that motherboard from them, which has a whopping 16-phase VRM. It's absolutely ridiculous. There is some, doubling schemes and stuff, but it can deliver so much power. And so they might have actually they might have maxed out the VRM. I'm not entirely sure, because even that is, not necessarily enough for the 2990WX. And especially because there's only, 2 8-pins to deliver power to that motherboard, which can only deliver up to a certain wattage.
Yeah.
And so this might be able to be pushed further when a better board comes out, if a better one ever comes out. But this is the only board with a VRM powerful enough that could achieve this thing, no matter what other stuff you have going for you. Mm-hmm. Absolutely incredible. I thought this was pretty amazing. And they hit 8,523 points on Cinebench. Ridiculous. My chip, I've overclocked and hit 3,300. Right, and that's my 1950X. So this is just absolutely insane in terms of performance. Remember, we're looking at mid 5,000 points for a reference 2990WX. So this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
Boom. So Intel i9 news.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Did you look at this at all?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So it looks like we're going to finally be getting something good from Intel in terms of something that the community's been asking for them for years, which makes me wonder if maybe they made this change when people started asking for it, but Intel just is really strict about product design and wouldn't change it for previous products. We finally have a soldered IHS, in theory, in rumor, basically confirmed from my understanding. There was some slides that leaked from video cards that seem to confirm this, as well as previous rumors from people that have seen the chip. There's overclockers and stuff that said the i9 9900K is going to be shipping with a soldered IHS. It's about time, especially with an 8-core chip. I can't imagine Tim doing anything good for it. Because as it stands right now, you can still overclock pretty well with the Tim. Mm-hmm. Of course, you have higher temperatures and other stuff like that. But an 8-core, I could actually see the overclock being very greatly hindered because of using Tim instead of using solder. So this is really cool. Finally, Intel's maybe realizing that they're being idiots and their chips are being held back by Tim. So... Tim, you need to stop pulling Intel back.
Why don't they just fire Tim already?
I know. Well, they must have.
He's been holding them back for years.
Tim's been holding them back, and I think they finally are just like, we're done with you, Tim.
You're sorry, Tim.
Yeah, we're sorry. You'll have to find another job ruining somebody else's company. All right.
Hopefully not AMD.
Yeah, Tim, don't go work for AMD. You should go work for Samsung or Amazon.
ARM.
Well, no, just or Qualcomm. Go work for somebody that's too big. Qualcomm, yeah. Go work for somebody that's too big that needs some damage done to them. Somebody that is too powerful. Qualcomm's a great example of too powerful. I mean, Samsung, Amazon, they're bigger and maybe have more power, but they're at least not displaying monopolization the way Qualcomm is. So,
well, the weird thing with Samsung is they make a lot of chips, but they don't make a lot for themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas Qualcomm forces people to use them.
Yeah.
So.
It's, Qualcomm, we can kind of agree we hate them. Yeah. So, you guys want memory prices, NAND prices, DRAM prices to go down?
I want them to go up.
I think they should go up. I don't think $800 for 64 gigs is enough. I think that's too cheap.
We need to triple the price, then you can sell your RAM, and then we lower the price, and then you buy more RAM. It's not illegal because it's not the stock market, it's RAM market.
Yeah, there we go. It's RAM market, so it's okay. That's a good idea. So, so it looks like, rumor has it, that NAND prices and DRAM are going to go up again. I'm just kidding, guys. It looks like we're finally going to recover from it. Very, very excited for this. It looks like this is going to be a good thing here. So it looks like there's a NAND overproduction / oversupply situation, which isn't surprising considering the shortage. Anyway, basically it looks like we could see NAND prices go way down to the point of potentially seeing SSDs at 8 cents a gigabyte.
Until they scale down production and then prices shoot back up.
And then price fix. Yeah. They're going to sell a whole bunch of stuff, hoard that money, then price fix. It's gonna, and then China's going to sue them, and then they're going to get fined, and then they're going to stop price fixing. But, so this is really good news for now. I hope that, so I'm assuming the 8 cents per gigabyte, that would be with, QLC, so it wouldn't be the best for a boot drive or something like that, but that's still pretty close to hard drive pricing in terms of price per gig.
Oh my gosh, if this could be a consistent thing for long enough that console manufacturers could count on it and next-gen consoles could have SSDs finally.
That'd be so nice. They take forever. They take forever to do anything. So this would be great. And so I hope this is true. And also I hope this is true for my sake because I need more RAM. And so it's I really hope this is a thing. And actually is true. It's still just a prediction, not a rumor, a prediction. But let's hope it's true. Let's hope it's true. So very last thing we wanted to go over, actually, just really quick, is Netflix. This is kind of a random thing, but something I thought was noteworthy is Netflix is displaying ads.
To some people, kind of yes but no. So essentially, this is
a good way to put it.
This is for people that follow YouTube news. YouTube does a lot of tests, and that's been causing a lot of controversy. Yeah. This is a test. It's not like it's implemented for everyone. Yeah. And that means testing. Some things enable,
and it's not damaging content, whereas YouTube's thumbnail thing was actually bad for creators.
So essentially what is happening is in between episodes, not during, Netflix is displaying content recommendations. Now, I actually do believe that...
They say in between binges in specific, too, so I wonder if it's 2 or 3 episodes that triggers this. Yeah. Right?
It might be
for certain users, too.
Yeah. Because, for those that... don't binge Netflix for some reason. What are you doing with your life?
I know, right?
After a while, Netflix has a thing asking if you're still watching, and it happens more frequently on content they don't make because they're paying per view. Yeah. And so speaking of, they pay per view, they want to make sure that you're watching content you like and you're going to want to stay on the platform.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are saying, they might be charging, and yes, that's possible. I don't think that would happen, at least initially.
Charging
the companies to show the ads.
Yeah, like AMC or whatever, for example, that are showing that these ads are.
Netflix is going to make a lot more money in the long term by just ensuring that you don't go to other platforms than they would off the small amounts of money they would get from showing you an ad every once in a while in between every 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah. And I think this actually stems out from Netflix. Potentially, we were talking about it a couple weeks ago of the rumor of Netflix running into an issue where there's so many users they can't grow much more. And so the concern, this is Netflix maybe recognizing that and going, the way to sustain now is to not push to get more users by making it cheaper, but to push to keep users.
There's also the issue that, like, people like to make the, joke or just say, like, Netflix doesn't have much anymore because they've been losing a lot of third-party content. But they've been making so much content.
Yeah, they've been losing a lot of money, by the way, because they're making their own content.
They're making so much content that it's hard to find things. And so that's why they've been doing things that some people don't like. And, like, they showed the teasers or the previews of videos when you're hovering over it for a while. They do different things like that to try and get you interested in content you might not have otherwise watched. Yeah. Because realistically, there's probably some really good stuff on there that everyone would like that they just never find.
Nobody knows about. Yeah, and to touch also though on the whole preview thing too, is I actually think it's a nice feature. Just please don't push it out to devices that can't handle it.
Yeah.
I have my 4K smart TV. It's a Samsung, an old unit over there, like one of the first 4K models that came out, and that little auto preview thing makes it real slow to click through things, right? But in general, I actually think it's kind of aesthetically pleasing, so.
Now, Netflix does claim that the ads are skippable. Some people have said that they aren't. That can be maybe a platform issue, though. I know that, like, some TVs, like, I've had a couple different smart TVs. The apps react differently, and sometimes there are issues with certain things.
Yeah, and if this is just a little thing, they're not going to put a ton of programming and R&D into trying to fix quirks.
They said it's skippable. They might have worded that poorly and meant, like, if it gets implemented widespread, it would be skippable.
Yeah, that could be too, yeah.
Also, some platforms are going to be harder to skip on than others, like, ads on YouTube for people watching on Chromecast. Fucking annoying because it's,
you have to open up your phone.
You have to go to that, and generally, if you're watching on a Chromecast, it's because you don't want to use your phone.
Buy YouTube Red, pay for your content. So, yeah, I don't know. This doesn't bother me too much. I think it's interesting and understandable as long as they're really not using it to make a ton of money, but more so to actually help you find shows you might like.
On top of that, what I would like to see is them. Now, this can cause other issues too, but try and limit the length of the ad to the length of the credits of the show, or that, because for those that don't know, so like when you're watching Netflix, when you get to the end of an episode, it will minimize the episode for the credits and just show like a splash screen.
And then
what if they had what if they had the credits and then instead of a generic splash screen, maybe they had some kind of teaser for the content. Yeah. They still show the credits so that people are still getting their name.
And the default on your remote is still click OK to go to the next episode.
Realistically, they're just not actually like adding something or delaying the time to your next episode.
Yeah.
They're just putting in a 10-second ad instead of 10 seconds of blank screen. Yeah. That would, I feel like, be a better way to do it.
I think it's a great idea.
It would be less frustrating.
Yeah.
They'd have to figure out some things because, some shows they probably wouldn't want to do that on because the end credits have stuff in them.
Yeah, right.
Things like that. It's going to have to be a case-by-case basis, but especially for Netflix-made shows, I think that's the way to do it.
I think it's a great idea, yeah. And I mean, Netflix has progressed into trying to make their own content rather than provide other content. That was their initial goal.
Yeah. They're slowly becoming an HBO competitor rather than a Hulu competitor.
Yeah, right. Good way to put it. Very good way to put it. Except they have a lot more content than HBO even, I'd say, at this point. But not necessarily more good funny. Content.
They're trying to become an HBO competitor as far as quality of content, while HBO tries to become a Netflix competitor as far as amount of content.
Yeah. And then we have Amazon, who's basically becoming a Hulu competitor because they're offering like other channels through their service
although
and stuff too.
I do want to see their new Tom Clancy show.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It does look really interesting. I want to see it. I do want to see it. Yeah, exactly.
I'll watch it just because of him.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely will plan. I plan to watch that. And so I think Amazon might end up being what Netflix kind of was, and Netflix is going to be more like its own content provider that a lot of people use, and people will use Amazon to get content from other distributors that don't, and by allowing other apps and stuff like that to go through the Amazon menus and everything, that integrates all these companies that want to have their own service like HBO and stuff, and you have to pay your own thing for. It's like, hey, you come on Amazon, you give people a slight discount. It's easier for people to get to your stuff. You get more views.
Yeah. Amazon, can you please make the UI on PC not trash?
That'd be real nice. It's horrible.
It shouldn't look like your Amazon store.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
And it's like that not just for their digital content, but their physical DVDs and stuff too, which is more okay, but still kind of like,
I mean, I expect the DVDs to look like the store.
More like a store, yeah.
But
although they could integrate better if they redesigned the UI for watching content and then also had like a little buy physical button or something and goes to the listing for that. But
it's like, how do you not build out a proper browsing experience? Discoverability is utter trash on PC.
Yeah, it's really sad. And like Netflix's PC experience is pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, aside from having to use Edge for certain things.
I watch most of my content on PC, so I'm not going to watch... That's most of why I don't watch Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. But that's pretty much everything, guys, other than one important thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to step away for this part, and he's going to unbox something.
So one note is, A, it's giant, and B, we have to take all this stuff down, so you'll be getting audio from the camera microphone, which isn't as good, so I apologize for that ahead of time. But I've got a unboxing of a Acer monitor, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning, coming up here. It's giant, so I do also apologize for the framing. It was very hard to get the box in the video, but don't worry, the monitor is very well presented here. Very excited to use this display, finally something that I think two 1080 Ti's will have fun with, you know.
Yeah.
So, but...
yeah, we'll get on to that.
Yeah. Alright guys, so we are taking a quick break from WordCast here to bring you guys an unboxing, which I normally don't do, so that's why this is kind of just a little moment ripped out in WordCast for you here, because I don't think it necessarily deserves a dedicated video, but this is something that I'll be doing full content coverage on in terms of a review and other stuff like that, because I actually haven't seen much content on this particular monitor. That was not plural. This is one box for a singular monitor. Amazon still somehow 2-day ships this with Prime. I don't know why they even are able to with something like this. But anyway, this is an Acer monitor, and I don't know the model number because I purposefully decided to try not to remember it because it's such a horrible model number that Acer, you need to just stop it with your model number. So instead, it's actually quicker for me to tell you the specs of this. It is a 38-inch ultra-wide monitor at 3840 by 1600, 75 hertz with FreeSync. Now, I won't be using the FreeSync feature myself, but whatever. 75 hertz is still a nice benefit that you can run it on an NVIDIA card or Intel if you, for whatever reason, are using Intel. But the big thing is just the higher resolution, the curved panel, everything is just pretty incredible about this monitor spec-wise. I'm very excited to use it. It runs about $1,000 on Amazon. The price does fluctuate up and down. This is the HDR model. Basically, it can play back HDR. It is not a straight up actually like proper HDR monitor. It only has like 350 nits of brightness. I don't know what the peak brightness is. That I believe is the sustained brightness, but I don't know. Like it's edge lit, so it doesn't have local dimming and like in terms of global illumination, local dimming or anything like that. But it is HDR in the sense that you'll get some better contrast and stuff. But the biggest thing here is I just wanted to open it because it's a massive monitor that I haven't seen too much content on. So let's get to cutting it open. I seriously was blown away by how big the box was. And it's like, I understand, it is a curved panel. So of course, like the box is going to be fairly large because they've got to compensate for the curve. And also I apologize to anybody about the framing here. My head might be a little cut off and stuff. This is huge, and it was very hard to get the framing right for this in the first place, despite having a rather large room that we film in down here. But yeah, so I figured though this is something that I'm pretty excited for it. I've been wanting a new monitor for a while. My current build is a 1950X stock clocks with two 1080 Ti's at stock clocks in SLI, and right now I'm running a 2560 by 1080 monitor at 75 hertz. Obviously, there is no need for 210 Ti's for that, but the reason that I had those was because I was planning to get something like this, which is about a perfect in-between between 3440 by 1440 and full 4K in terms of pixel count, which means I should get better frame rates than the 4K ratings that you see on like the 1080 Ti, SLI, or in games that don't support SLI, the single 1080 Ti benchmarks, and usually I felt like those at the higher settings were a little too low to be comfortable to play with, sometimes in the 40s or 50s. This should be just low enough that I should be able to get, even though games only support a single 1080 Ti, pretty solid frame rates with pretty high settings, so, you know, close to that 75 hertz mark, or maybe even a little higher, using fast sync to help smooth out the stuttering and stuff like that. So anyway, let's see. I'm assuming it's a box inside a box, but we'll find out here momentarily. It's a box inside a box. That's what I expected. But the box inside the box is not much smaller than the big box. That was just for padding. I do hope this thing survived. Amazon, or anybody that works at Amazon, or Acer, if you see this video, I would really appreciate it if you'd put fragile on the box, on the outer box, so that way this isn't tossed around, because it is a huge 45-pound package. All the different carriers out there, whether it's UPS, USPS, or FedEx delivering these, probably don't think it's a $1,000 monitor. They probably think it's some heavy, you know, more industrial type thing, and aren't likely to be careful with it. So please put fragile on it. But anyway, let's see if I can even get this thing out of here. I don't know what the best way to do this is. I mean, this thing is massive. Let's see. Maybe I have to go over here and like, I'll tip it up. So that, oh wow, that actually fit in the frame decently. I hope it's in focus. Yeah, so that's that goes all the way in. Just FYI, it is about 2 feet thick, so that's pretty huge. I'm very excited. So as you can tell on the front, they don't even put the model number, which tells me that Acer knows their model numbers suck. I don't know why they continue to do it. Anyway, just to do a quick rundown because this is an unboxing video. So it is QHD, but it's actually in some ways over QHD, right? It is a bigger panel, so you're getting close to the same pixels per inch as a 34-inch at 3440 by 1440 instead of the 3840 by 1440 at 38 inches, but you do get a little more, you know, vertical real estate and stuff like that. It is pretty thin bezel-wise, of course we'll see that in a moment. It's got a built-in blue light filter that nobody will use. A lot of features that nobody cares about, but I do like that it has a USB-C input here that you can use for a USB hub in the back. So I do appreciate that they actually have USB-C on here, because that's something I want to see more common. Plus I do have a USB-C port on my computer and I don't use it for anything, so now I'll have some kind of use case for it. But anyway, there you guys can see it. Yeah, HDR ready, so at least they're only saying ready, which kind of points towards the fact that it's not actually an HDR monitor, but that it does support the HDR output, which does give you some benefits. Alright. So this is big. It's got pretty good sized handles here. Yeah, this is definitely more dented than I'd like to see. Definitely not the best job carrier-wise. There's marks all over it where it was smashed in, but hopefully it has good enough padding to survive good, because I'm going to be really disappointed, of course, if this thing is busted. So hopefully Acer knows how to package a giant, fragile, curved monitor that is this expensive. I'm going to be really annoyed if they're too stupid to know how to package this. See, now I have another giant box that I have to put somewhere in this room. Yeah, see, so there's like breakage here on the foam. It's hard to sell foam too. It's not like the nice good stuff. So this is a fun one. Power brick for this monitor is about the size of a pretty decent gaming laptop power brick. So there is that. I've seen bigger on a laptop, but certainly bigger than my XPS with the 1050 in it. So anyway, big power brick. Kind of wish you would have built that into the monitor. It's already huge. Probably could have fit it. It does have, I believe, a headphone loop or a cable management loop that goes on the side there. Let's see, what else does it come with? It does, nicely enough, come with an HDMI cable, about 3 feet, and it comes with a DisplayPort cable, so they're including quite a bit of cables. It comes with the USB-C cable, so that's awesome. I know a lot of this you guys can't see, that's why I'm kind of just reading it out, because, well, I don't know how easy it would be to try and move things around and get you guys framing. So anyway, little accessory box in here. Not sure what's in here. Some kind of big metal plate, which I assume is for VESA mountability. I don't know. Giant chunk of metal. Giant metal bracket of some sort. Here, I'll actually show you guys that one, because that's not something you typically see. Not sure what that's for. I'll find out at some point. I actually probably won't be VESA mounting this, though, because the stand has tilt and up and down, as well as swivel, as well as I can't even remember what the you know what I mean, turning it into portrait mode. Not that you never do that. I think it supports that last one, but I'm not entirely sure. And it comes pretty much fully assembled inside the box here. And it does take up almost the entire width. Let's see, how stable is that? Okay, there is some closed cell foam in here too, so that's good. They use the hard foam for the top, which actually is probably understandable. Let's see if I can lean this forward and show you guys. So yeah, that's the panel there. So it's almost the width of the box. Panel is 35 inches wide, I believe. Let's see if I can figure out a way to get it out. I might have to call out for help on this one, guys. Let's see here. There's a cover for the I/O, presumably. Fitting in there. I think that's everything. Everything seems intact so far. Let's see, can I just lift it up? Is that how this works? Is this a handle? All right. This is heavy. Okay, that monitor weighs like probably somewhere in the realm of 35 pounds on its own. Box was 46 pounds. 45, 46. Nothing else in there. So we can move that out of the way somehow. Now that, my friends, is one big, big monitor. Been very, very excited to get my hands on one of these. Been waiting quite some time for it. Been waiting. I got the 1080 Ti's a while back and been wanting to get this guy in specific, but I was having trouble deciding if I wanted to go with like 144 or 120 hertz at a lower resolution, slightly smaller panel size, but I figure, you know, I game, but I also do a lot of edit and other content creation on my PC. That's why I have 1950X and stuff. So this probably actually fits my use case better. And there'll be, like I said, a full review of it. Let's get the get this off. Please don't tell me there's a crack on it. I haven't seen the front yet. If there's a crack on it, I'm going to be extraordinarily disappointed. Let's see here. We walk around. I'm a little scared to see if there's any cracks on it. All right. There is not so far. No physical damage that I can see anywhere. Well, there's a little bit of scuffing up here. Darn. I'm not going to return it for that. That's not worth it. I might buff out the microfiber, actually. But I'm not seeing any panel damage. So that's good. This thing is massive. That's one thing I can say. Might come out later. We'll see. But so far, everything seems intact. Of course, that's assuming it actually functions, which I won't know for a while. Guys, got to get back to filming WordCast after this, but well, the base stand has pretty good stuff on it. The base is metal, aluminum, I'm assuming. And there's some scratches on the stand back here, like it wasn't painted as good as it could have been. Panel itself seems perfect, other than that one blemish there, like the backside and everything. But the stand, obviously, is in the back, so it's no big deal. But it looks like the paint came off or something here. I wonder if I did get a floor model. I hope not. It was packaged like new, so. Yeah, no, there's no scratches around the ports or anything, so I'm pretty sure this was brand new. I don't know what's up with that kind of bad paint back here. It does not look like it was worn off. It looks like it was maybe just not painted very well. Okay, so there's some other blemishes on the stand, so I think it's just not the best paint quality that Acer's using maybe on this, which I wish was a little better. considering the astronomical price tag of this panel. But I'm not going to complain too much. Not going to complain too much because the front is beautiful, and I'm very, very, very happy that Acer seems to be one of the few companies out there that maybe they don't understand model names, but at least they so far seem to be understanding aesthetics. Please stop putting red and other permanent painted colors on a display. Or, you know, if you put lighting on the monitor, make it RGB or don't put lighting, like the underglow that Asus does and stuff. If they limit you to one color, which is very commonly red, they don't go with a lot of builds. Whereas this could fit in any environment, gaming, work, whatever. So, yeah. How wobbly is it? It's a little wobbly. I mean, it's a heavy panel, so it doesn't surprise me. But it's not too bad. Because these tables, this is an IKEA table, the cheapest one they make. They're known for being wobbly in and of themselves. So, like, it does seem to recover semi-quickly. And the table's wobbling a lot, too, which is a portion of this. But I don't think that I'll need a base amount for it to help make it more stable. We'll find out later, of course. Let's see about the adjustments of the thing, though. Make sure everything works. So you got height adjustment. Pretty good amount there. And you do have swivel. Pretty solid amount. That's the stopping point there and there when you heard it move a little bit. Rotate. I'm feeling a no, but I don't see any reason you'd ever want to rotate a curved monitor, so I'm okay with that. And tilt, which seems to work fine.
All right, now that we've got everything set back up and our computers are here ready to go, that's going to be it for this episode, you guys.
Yeah, it took a long time to get this stuff back up, guys, too. We had to reset the lights, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're all set and good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think of Turing so far. Let me know that you did not pre-order it. I need confirmations on that.
Yeah, definitely. Every single person that did not pre-order, comment that you didn't pre-order.
Yes.
And if you did pre-order, drop a dislike.
Yes. Yeah.
That way we can know. That way we can really know. Yeah, that's a good idea. But comment and like if you didn't pre-order. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great way to put it. But anyway, guys, we'll see you next week. This should be uploaded in theory on Thursday, but this was filmed. We probably should have said this at the beginning, but whatever. On August 21st.
Yes.
So sorry if any news breaks between now and Thursday.
Which I doubt because it's most of the Gamescom news has already come down.
Yeah, so it's like, what's going to happen? We just got next-gen GPUs, and last week we got next-gen Threadrippers. So
and if there was going to be like a VR hardware announcement or something, we probably would have gotten it today.
Yeah, I would assume. So, and if it is, we'll cover it in the week after anyway, if something like that happens. But thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.